Okay, so sorry about the lateness on everything. It's just been nuts. This is our busiest time of the year. We get basically January. Let me back up a little bit. I'm gonna post it on YouTube like I always do. I always do a video in mind with a customer, or a video with a customer in mind. So if it's not you and you're just checking this out, this is a late 70 model CJ5 with the flange 44 offset rear that everybody wants, and it's already got the disc brake Dana 30 upgrade on it. A lot of these were 27s, which were, I don't know, in my opinion, not great, but to each his own. I met a guy last week that just loves the thing. So this has got the Dana 30 out of like a 72 to 75 more than likely, although you can even go up a little bit later on those, and they bolt pretty much right in. But it's got the open knuckles and then the disc brakes on the front. And then actually the rear on this axle, this 44, has had the disc brake conversion on it. So it's actually all 4 disc brakes. But it's Monday, February 19th, 2024. This is President's Day today. And yeah, just giving you a little bit better idea of the way this thing's set up. And so when you get it, you can decide if you want to redesign some things. There's some things on this frame that they set up pretty sweet. There's some other things that I'd say, you know, it looks good, or let me rephrase that. It's functional, but I probably would set it up a little bit differently. That's totally up to you. Just depends on what you're doing with it, obviously. And for anybody out there, kind of give you an idea what you can do to these things. So one of the things you'll notice right off the bat is it sits pretty high. That's because this is a spring over axle swap that they've done on it. This other one, we're doing this real big project on this customer's Jeep. We have it covered right now, and I was messing with it earlier. It's covered pretty well. I don't want to untie it, but it's this one over here, this red one. It's the same year, and it sits, you know, like a little lift as well, but not nearly as high as this guy does. So it's just two different purposes. He's wanting to build something that, you know, he can go get ice cream with, hang out with the family, drive down possibly even the highway. Although these aren't, you know, super fun to take down the highway, we're trying to make it to where it's a little bit more road friendly, because they had kind of crappy steering on them and a few other things. So if you're looking to upgrade your you know, 71 and early, basically it's the Kaiser era of Jeep, all the way back into the 40s, then you got to check this video out for a few reasons. One, it's going to show you a couple things that we're working on, and we're even doing, Jim, the guy just left, he's the one that's really taken on the fabrication on this other project, and this has been like a 6-month project, and possibly even longer than that, depending on, you know, what all happens. But we're getting motors built, some neat things set up for the Dauntless that's going back in his, we really bought this one to use some of the designs and also some of the parts, and then we have this left over, which is where my other customer comes in, and that's what he's looking at to take. You basically buy some of these parts that are off of this thing. So the fact that this has kind of got a rolling chassis under it and is pretty much set up for another tub to be thrown on it, it kind of fits his build, I believe, and go from there. Although you could definitely utilize what's on it as well if you wanted to stick with the 70-71 style, you know, tubs and stuff. There's been some cool upgrades to this thing. They put the tank in the rear, get a little more capacity out of your fuel if you put it down there. The frame has to be modified to do that. This frame has been modified to do that, minus the ratchet strap that's sitting down there. I think they just didn't, they wheeled in this Jeep. It's kind of crazy. I think they just didn't put straps on the tank. Most tanks, if you look at Jeeps, modern Jeeps, even some of the CJs, you know, they'll have a skid plate that holds the tank up in there, but then they use straps, and those straps kind of encase the tank to clamp down to hold it still. Well, they got lazy and did everything but the strapping, and it wouldn't have taken much, but, you know, maybe he didn't have the tub off, and it would be better if you're doing that to have a frame, you know, loose, that you can work on that way. So anyway, you know, I wanted to give you an idea, because I know you asked me, hey, when did those photos get taken? They got taken the day I sent them to you on that note, and that's totally understandable, because, I mean, you can take photos from years ago. This motor has been pulled, this drivetrain has been pulled, it is the engine's sitting in the garage right now, ready for a reseal, and just, you know, basically just, you know, it ran good compression numbers, everything like that, but, you know, it's old, and it'd be nice to throw oil pump. Not that it needs it. It ran, actually, this thing had phenomenal oil pressure, so you wouldn't even really need that if you didn't want to. But we're in there already, kind of thing, so you might as well. And then, you know, of course, timing set, I think Jerry always recommends when we get down into resealing the front mains and all that, you got to pull all that stuff off, so you might as well do that as well. Obviously with good parts, none of this junk that China's putting out. So, and then of course, you know, what else is left on this thing that either you may want or somebody else may want. So, we didn't talk about the carrier. I don't know if that's something you want on it. I believe, I know I've gone back and forth. I'm pretty sure this carrier is spoken for. I think this is going on the other one. It may not be something you even want, especially with your build you're doing on that old GPW. It might look kind of goofy with that on there. It just depends, I guess, what you're doing. So I will ask if you're wondering. The tires, he did say we can sell, so if you want them, they're yours, and you get all 5 of them. And the wheels they're 4 matching tires and wheels on the base ones, American Racing. And those were like, I mean, you can see them, they're like brand new. The spares still got the nipples on it, but it's a different style wheel. It's a black one, but it's a steel wheel. And like I said, it's still got little fuzzies on it from never being used. So, and then of course, there's going to be a lot of differences on your tub versus this one. Those old tubs, as far as, you know, the overall shape is basically the same, but designs and, you know, so yours has probably got a little bit more of a military look. So this top is spoken for, although this is, look, I've done this video, and this is gonna, I know this is gonna, especially with this other build we're doing, so I'll have to get with customer, but I just noticed that's got a big old patch on it, so that's probably going to be an irrelevant thing for that other one, especially as nice as we're making it, which is a total bummer. I don't know why I didn't see that till now, but that's kind of why I do videos. And I hadn't really detailed this one. We had done a video on an overall yard day, and we had it fired up and everything, and then I lost that video when I upgraded my phone. So this will stand for what we have at the moment on it. And then a couple other things, you know, you asked me about. There is this Mama? This is Mama. She's gonna be wondering what I'm doing. Hey, it is in my name, the title, so I do need to go do that, but I need to drop off. I do need to get a ride back eventually. Yeah. So are you guys gonna be out for a while? Yeah. Perfect. So I'll just call you, because I think Jerry pulled another set of tires and wheels. I'll bring those down. Okay. And have those dropped off, and I can do the other errands, and then finally get it over to alignment. Okay. Cool? Yeah. All right. Love you guys. All right. So I don't need to go to I'd rather go to the DP with you. Well, if you want to go with me when I go down. Yeah. So, all right. These are the beautiful ladies of the yard. Mama over there just had a baby girl. Hi. There's my little boy. And look at this little one. Is she? Baby sister. Baby sister. Say hi, Bubs. Hi. Love you guys. We'll go get a rocket engine later. All right. See you guys. Sorry about that. Always got to take time for the fam. All right. So anyway, back to this whole thing. Worn lockout hubs. You know, that stuff is nice because on those early ones, they didn't do any of these. They had closed knuckles. They had hard to. These are geared at 488. They're open. There are no lockers in them right now. These are a little bit of a bummer, but you know, it is what it is. That's pretty common on these old axles, not to have much in them for that kind of stuff. So you can always throw a locker in it later, especially in the gearing setup on them already. So the bumper is yours if you want it, the front one. I don't really have any desire or need for this one, at least at the moment. If you don't want it, I'll take it off. The winch I was going to put on my trailer. It's a cheap Harbor Freight one. So if you need a winch, we can work something out on that if you want. But and then of course the engine, and that's, you know, like I was showing you the other day, it's been pulled. It's at one in the shop. So let's see what else I can show you on this one. I think the The frame is excellent shape on this guy. It's we'll clean it up obviously when we get everything pulled on it. And there's usually, so these frames are not fully boxed in frames, and they never were. A lot of people do box them in. We can do that for you if you like. If you don't want to mess with it, if you want to mess with it, great. If you don't care, a lot of the early Jeeps are so light you don't really need it. But if you're going to be wheeling it, and you're going to be wheeling it fairly hard, I would probably say it's probably a good idea. Specifically, this area down is where you get the motor, especially with this Buick in there. This is it's a great motor. It is what we call kind of an old rowdy motor, and it gets up and goes. And if you want to see a frame twist, it's going to happen in this area. So would be probably a good idea to do something there. I know Jim wanted to build some sort of template for it anyway, so there's a possibility of that. And anyway, your power steering you asked about is on the pump, which is dangling still. So I can build you, I can add that stuff on. It unfortunately is our only one right now. So yeah, that's the other piece I'm looking for. Okay. So I will need to at least mock it up for our other build we're doing, because that's one of the big things he's doing on it, and then source another bracket for him. But I'm fine with that, as long as we can get it, done before we ship it. And if not, I'll have to ship you this stuff later. But I'll get it put on there for you, because that on a Buick, if you're not familiar with the Buicks at all, the parts that are hard on Buicks to find, well, Buick in general is hard to find. Everybody's wanting them right now, and they're pulling pretty good money. Especially a good runner, but it's the peripheral stuff that goes on the outside of the block. So your alternator mounts, which that'll obviously be on there, and your power steering, which is not something that all these got. Most of them didn't have that, so you'd have to go in and find it off like an old Skylark or Skyhawk or some of the old I think Oldsmobile Buick stuff, from what my understanding is. So anyway, this one, we'll get that built into your quote and make sure that it arrives, if not shortly after. And this one's got headers that come down. Buicks are notorious here. Let's just talk briefly on the steering setup, because this is where it gets a little bizarre, and you'll probably not want to go this route, but you can, and it's set up to go this route on this one. But it does change the look on it, and you got to do quite a bit. And they cut. This is the first time in 18 years I've ever seen a power steering setup on one of these Dauntlesses done this way, and it wasn't terrible. I mean, they could have cleaned it up a little bit. It's kind of neat because you can almost get like an exoskeleton look out of it. But they had to do it this way because of where they punched everything out. It's nice because of the exhaust issues that you have when you're routing Buick power steering setups. Typically, how these work, when you see a power steering done, is they maintain the stock steering column down to the Ross box, which is usually around in this area. This is when they get awful steering, and you drive and you're like, what the heck? Because everything is being steered behind the axle versus in front of the axle, which is where they went to with the Saginaw. Because of that, it just makes them real squirrely driving down the road. So you get a steering gearbox, a manual box that normally is placed right around this area. And when they do a power steering conversion, you can get them from Novak or Advance or all those guys. And when you do those, they cut off or they remove the Ross box, they cut the lower shaft, get the spline to stick out of it, put a knuckle on it, essentially, basically what that is right there. And then they route everything underneath the motor mount up to the front, and that gives it more of that authentic clean look versus kind of having to do this here. So this isn't a bad way to go, and for a wheeling Jeep, this might even be more ideal in some ways, because you get the upgraded, you get the later column in them. But just wanted to show you that to make you aware that is the setup. Now, the way the box is mounted on this guy, which is the Saginaw, right? It is up at an angle. So if you're gonna drop it low and do the way Advance and some of the other kits do, that box will work, but you'll want to have it repositioned so it's not jutting up that way. And maybe you have an idea that, you know, would work and still utilize something of this fashion. And you might not have these big bulging on your fin. They may not come out this far, so you might not even have to trim it all. But, and in the other areas they did goofy, so they made shock hoops here. Now, this is probably to get more travel, I'm assuming, out of this spring over axle conversion, because when you go spring over, it does get a little weird with your shock mounts. So they built, you know, loops on it. Those are obviously come with the frame and everything. You can stay that route, or you can go back to more of a more modern, or let's see, not necessarily modern, but the right wording, tamer, which is essentially using the factory design and maybe throwing on a set of late CJ5 spring mounts. Those I've seen adapted to these and give it not as long of a throttle, you know. But anyway, this is just the engineering this thing kind of had set up on it, or lack thereof engineering, depending on who you talk to. So yeah, so a lot to look at in here, I know, and everybody that's, you know, owns one of these probably going, what the heck did they, you know, but it worked. I drove this Jeep and it wheeled. Matter of fact, if you can see, we got these big hills behind our home up here, and we got a nice big area we can crawl up. That's the very first thing I did in this thing, is I messed around with it up there. It had a little bit of axle wrap, which is super common on spring overs. So I will tell you right now, if you're wheeling it only and trailing it out to your trailering it out to your trail. Sorry, I got to pee really bad, and I had a ton of coffee this morning, so I'm wired. Anyway, if you're gonna be doing that, probably not gonna bug you too bad. It was enough that I could hear it banging on the drive shaft. Is essentially when you get axle wrap, it's binding. It'll allow your drive shafts to bind. There's a couple quick, easy swaps. I did them on a YJ a long time ago. You can obviously do what, you know, essentially what they do in trucks, and put almost like a track bar or a torsion bar off the back axle and bring it up. That becomes kind of an issue if you hang up on things. So, you know, they get around that by switching the designs out later, and some of the coil spring setups that, you know, honestly would be badass on this thing. It wouldn't be super hard to do to put a link system on it, but that just depends, again, on what you're doing with it. If you're going to be driving it on the road, I would find that very annoying, and I would definitely be throwing on some sort of traction bar or something to prevent that. Okay, so we'll go, and when we pull this tub, you're going to be able to see everything the way it was set up and everything. So we'll get all that done for you. Haven't bored you to death in this video. A couple more things I want to go over though real quick. So the exhaust, anytime you put headers on a Dauntless, most of the time you're going to have them dump out the sides like this. Now, this works really well, and this other Jeep we're building is exactly set up the same way. This works really well for a street Jeep that's not going to see a lot of dirt or a lot of hard off-road. It's not a great setup for an off-roading Jeep, and the reason is the obvious. These things are now going to be hanging, and yeah, although you may not be way that high, if you do come down on a rock, what's the first thing it's going to hit? It's going to, you know, your exhaust is going to become your rock rail or whatever you want to call it, and that's not going to last. It's going to take one or two punches, and you're going to break the thing off or squish it to where it won't flow. So that's usually not the way to go on these if you want to be wheeling it. Usually the way to go on wheeling these is to put manifolds back on them, and there are some really rare manifolds out there that I haven't quite been able to get a hold of, but I have a buddy who's got a couple. He's not letting him go, unfortunately. Their performance is going to kick you down in performance, so there's probably some other ways you could go about this. But if you're going to do headers, most headers are going to go out that way. Now, I talked to a guy last week that said you can build a header that does more of a traditional, not out the side, but it's something custom that they're doing, so I can look up that stuff. But the manifolds are these exhaust headers are yours if you want them. If you don't want them, no big deal. Like I said, if you need actual exhaust manifolds, that's not built into that quote, and those aren't easy to find. I can get you a normal set. It's the slim design ones that you get on, I guess, the Skyhawk, that are the hard ones to find. But anyway, we can go there. You can kind of address exhaust. You're going to have a couple weeks because it's going to take us a little bit of time to get the seals and some of the stuff to get this engine up and running. And I will have it on this frame running for you, whether that be with this tub and then we pull the tub later, or Jerry says they're super easy. We can get it to fire up without it, without this tub even being in play. So I'd say we get it pulled so you can kind of see which will be arriving. We'll do another video for you. And for those of you who are interested, definitely to keep in touch, because like I said, we got a really cool build on this other one coming up, which he's doing a very similar thing, except for the fact he's staying with a 7071 tub. And then the seats, of course, inside wise. So, you know, low backs, these are just Smitty builds, nothing super fancy about them. The cage in this one, we get for you. Like I said, this is actually a really nice cage. I mean, it was done really well. You may have to measure, modify it slightly. I'm not 100% on that. The early Jeeps are slightly, you know, especially on the old flatties, I'm imagining they're probably going to be a little bit different. I don't know if that's going to be in the width, the way this one is put up on the wheel wells, or what. And if you'd like some measurements before we even go down that road with this cage system, we can. If you weld, I would almost say, for the price it is, take it, and then you can, if you needed to narrow it or something, you can. But it's definitely, somebody did a decent job on it, and it's a full wrapped on the front. And then I would imagine they either took this out of something else at one time, maybe a 7 or something, because it's been trimmed here. Looked like it was a fully boxed in cage here at one time, but I don't believe that was in this Jeep, because I don't see any, you know, from that. So, and then brackets in these 7071s won't apply to you, but for people who are wondering, yes, these are very hard to find. These are not. These are just angle iron that somebody bolted in to get them. They actually work okay. Something like this, pretty cheap. The original ones are super expensive, but you know, if you can deal with not the original and don't really care about that, for anybody looking, I can sell you a nice set of seats with and give you the brackets if you need them for the 7071. So they might have a little bit of a bounce to them, but you could probably fix that with a hook or something in the back. And then of course the dash in this one. So this is some of the stuff we're working on for later Jeeps. I don't want to get too much into them, but anything before 71 or 71 up to, you're going to have big holes in your floors here where the tunnels go. This one was modified obviously for the T18 that was sitting in it, which we believe is sold, but if not, you can always call. I know that's a desirable, it's a highly desirable transmission. So and we're not getting them as many as we used to get. So, but nonetheless, the dash in this one is original to 7071. Now that's all kind of Mickey Mouse and not done great. They could have done that a lot better. The original steering column is hung on the bottom, so if that's the way yours looks to anybody out there, that is the correct way. If you're wanting to go with a tilt steering wheel, and I don't think this one is tilt or column, or later column, you do have to modify. There's a couple ways to go about this. One of the ways we've done it in the past, so we like it to do it, is to send you a 80 or a 76 to 86 dash, and you can, you know, use that as that. A lot of guys, what they're doing is using that template for the steering, but then they're modifying so it looks somewhat original, but with the hole for the steering setup. We'll walk around there and I'll take a look at that for you, give you a little bit closer up on it. And then I gotta go run these errands, and I'll be back and we can settle up on a final deal if you like. Okay, so that's that. Now, what else do you notice about this guy? This is another big something we're trying to kind of put together ourselves to be able to offer a kit of interlude that people can just buy the kit from us. I know everybody says that, and then it ends up being half-assed when it comes out. But the good news is I got an amazing crew. I got an amazing fabricator that's on staff, and they are really trying to CAD this thing, engineer it out, make it actually work, and not just every, you know, in all facets, not just the aesthetic version of it. So these pedals in here work. They're probably out of a later CJ, I would imagine. The issue with this setup, and one of the reasons that I said, hey Jim, let's see if we can make this better, He did so you'll notice that first off, you're noticing hanging pedals. Up until 71, they did not have hanging pedals. They had what I always call push-through pedals, which are essentially pedals that just shoot through the floor there, and then the linkages go up to your carbs. The reason they went to hanging pedals in this is for a few reasons. One is probably to help accommodate the bracing for the steering wheel or column, because they kind of use they kind of support each other in a sense. And then the other reason is they went with power. Well, they didn't have power brakes in this one. That's the one we're setting up. This is actually kind of hard to set up power brakes. We're trying to come up with a system to do that. I think it was mainly to get that column in there, because they kind of utilize the same bolts when you do that. So I don't want to confuse you or myself any more than that. I'm not going to talk a lot about that, because I'm going to let Jim kind of finish what he's doing on that. And then if we do come out with something, I'll hit you up later and let you know if that's something you're interested in. This is okay. I'm pretty tall, and so I love the fact that they got this up out of the way, because that's the first thing I always hate about CJ5s, is that I get into things and it's hard for me to get her in them. The pedals in this, and possibly because the way they did these aftermarket seat brackets, but are uncomfortably high. And if you're wheeling in it, it's probably doable, because you can just throw it in granny and crawl up whatever. But I found this very uncomfortable and awkward, the way this was set up. If you're a short guy, it's probably more manageable, but I still would like to see these pedals down closer to the floor. They're sitting a good, I don't know, foot off the floor, and in this tight of setup, it just was extremely awkward and binding for me to be in it. It cramped my legs up pretty quickly. So if you're wanting to mess with that, and don't mind the setup that's in here, by all means. I wouldn't even charge you for the column, because it's an automatic column that somebody's converted to a manual. You can tell because of this here. And it does have a nice Grant wheel on it. And we figure that out. And the pedals, or each, maybe these, or do something else. The fuel pedal's still the same in it. So anyway, that's one of the reasons I really wanted to show you. Man, I made this video way too long. So anyway, I wanted to show you everything you're seeing in this thing, just so you could really see it. And then, like I said, we'll get it all pulled apart. And if there's something else that you liked on it or didn't like on it, if it's something we can do here, I'd be happy to. If it's something we just don't have time for, I'll probably just let you do it, and we'll go from there. So, all right. So, anybody with a Jeep CJ5 up to 1971 or after, I mean, we have 7 acres out here. We have a lot of cool things, a lot of conversions you can do out of this yard. That's pretty much what we've been known for. I mean, I've been doing this for 18 years. Jeeps Unlimited has been around since '84, and yeah, we're just trying to do our own thing out there in the mess of the world of parts and everything else, without repeating everybody else's, good things and bad, and reinventing the wheel. In some cases necessary, in other cases kind of a redesign of something that was already pretty good, and just make it either work or not. So questions, comments, parts requests, 303-666-9020. Chris is probably going to be the guy that talks to you mostly. I just rambled on for a good 30 minutes, Chris.
Oh, nice.
You know how I do my videos.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to grab that X real quick.
Okay, sounds good. You and Jerry are going?
Yeah, Jerry's already there.
Okay. Hey, do here. All right, partsbreakers.com, jeepsunlimited.net. And anyway, yeah, call me later today if you have a chance to watch it, and we'll digest it. Just put it on the background. Hopefully you didn't watch the whole thing. It wasn't the most exciting thing. Nobody hurting themselves in this one or blowing anything up, but a little bit informative, although informative in a different way, because like I said, that's anything but original. But it was cool. It's going to be sweet. I'd love to see your setup when you're all said and done. So when we get this one done, we'll get this one all photoed and videoed here in a few weeks. So all right, talk to you later.